Right, so today I want to talk to you about money mistakes people do in their 20s. And honestly, some of those mistakes I've probably done myself as well. People even continue doing those in their 30s and 40s. So even if you're older than that, it might still be useful for you. So the first mistake I see people doing when they're early on in their careers is upgrading their life too early. Now granted, all of us obviously want to level up and increase the overall life quality, the comfort of life, etc. I believe in a capitalistic world, upgrading your life over time, like your mindset, you want to upgrade your life as well. I totally get that. But there's a right time for it. And if you're beginning your career, you want to reinvest into yourself, into getting better, into honing your skills, and not necessarily into material upgrades, because those things will come by default later on, right? If you put in the right work, you plant the seeds for your career, for your life, over time, those things will naturally follow it. But sadly, too many young people are following social media, seeing what other people, maybe elderly people, are buying, and they want to have the same early on in their career. And that's just not how it's supposed to be. They take on unnecessary credit card risk, what have you. And yeah, in the end, honestly, it's going to hurt them long term, and they're going to really suffer from the debt, trying to pay it off. Don't try to impress other people because of your things, but rather because of your achievements, of your skills, of your progress. That's much more valuable than having the latest phone, car. 10 years later, nobody will remember how fashionable you were in university, right? So yeah, definitely stay humble and focus on the things that can actually bring you long-term results. The second mistake I see a lot of young people doing is not taking enough risk when they're young. Trust me, your 20s are definitely the right time to do so, because later on you're gonna be in your career, you're gonna be married, you're gonna have kids, you're gonna have so many commitments. You're not gonna just take a year off and travel to South America or Australia and just live in a van for a year, or quit your job and become a full-time YouTuber. There's so many things and opportunities in life that probably later on down the road, once you have so many commitments, you're not going to take it. That's understandable, right? You're not gonna just dismiss your family, because you're gonna have commitments, and that's part of life. And I think that's also the beauty of life, and will give you a lot of fulfillment. So use the 20s wisely. Don't be too boring. Don't just do the predictable things, but definitely do some crazy stuff, because honestly, those times probably won't come back anymore. And people always say, follow your passion. But if you don't try out things, you don't know if it's your passion or not. If you never eat lobster, you don't know if you like lobster or if you don't. So definitely go out there, expose yourself to new things, try new things, get to meet new people. And as I said in the previous point, don't invest in material things, but invest into experiences, into travels, into trying new things. Go bungee jumping, skydiving, whatever crazy things there are, try them, give them a go. Because once you're 40, 50, you might not do them anymore, and you might have regrets. And that's probably one of the worst things in life, to have regrets. When I was 16, I actually moved from Germany to New Zealand, knowing hardly any English, and yeah, basically moved there to the other side of the world for a year and a half, and it was really quite tough in the beginning. But in hindsight, that experience was so valuable for me. It really opened me up. I was really shy before, so that really made me much more outgoing, open-minded towards new things, excited to meet new people, make new connections, and travel and explore the world, which otherwise, if I would have stayed in Germany, you might have never seen this video, because I was really shy. Definitely would never consider doing anything like that, or building an international career as I did. Another mistake I see a lot of young people doing is not having a budget. Now I know it sounds very boring, budgeting, but trust me, if you don't know what you're spending, it's hard to save. And as I said previously, you don't want to overspend in your 20s, so you need to be very conscious of how much you earn and how much you spend, because that... I think I got a little bit off track over here. Jesus, I think that's not the real right path I'm walking, but nonetheless, I'm gonna go through this for you guys regardless, because that way you can find out where you're overspending and where you need to cut down some expenses. And back when I was in my 20s, I actually did that on an Excel sheet, recording every single transaction. It was really tedious and I really didn't enjoy it, but at the same time, by doing this every single day, at the end of the day, religiously, basically, I started really seeing where I spent the most and started cutting down on the areas where I overspent, and I felt it wasn't necessary. Sadly, back then we didn't have apps like Revolut, where you have already all the analytics inbuilt in the app, which is what I use right now, because whenever I spend now with my Apple Pay through Revolut, the app automatically categorizes it into the respective category, what it is, and I can see how much I spent on restaurants, how much I spent on hotels and other things, and that way it's very easy for me to know how much I spent a certain month. Geez, there better not be any snakes over here, especially when it comes to housing. I think a lot of young people actually overspend a lot there. It really makes sense to live in a small apartment in a studio. I lived in such a small studio at a time actually when I was living in Switzerland. I was working in Switzerland, but actually living in France, because it was much cheaper over there. Yes, I had to travel a little bit longer. It was a bit uncomfortable, but definitely I saved so much more money than if I would have lived in Switzerland, which was like more than double the price. So be very mindful, especially when you're young. Your accommodation can always be upgraded later on, but housing or rent is probably going to be your biggest expense. So if you you can cut it down, you will definitely be saving quite a lot of money that you can then invest in other things. So the next mistake is definitely about not building enough income streams. Now, most people, obviously, they graduate and they start their first job, and obviously they hustle very hard, and that's all good and great, but you don't want to over-rely on only one job. I think it's a good time in your 20s to really hustle hard and do more than is expected from you and more than your one job pays you, because hopefully you have ambition to grow beyond your 9-to-5 job one day. So while you need that income in the beginning to maybe fund your side hustle, etc., use that extra time on the weekends, during your studies, etc., to build a second income, some kind of side hustle. I mean, just go on YouTube, put in side hustle, and you're gonna have millions of videos showing you possible ways of how you can start monetizing and adding additional income streams. At the same time, you can also use the time to build your own personal brand, which probably in the beginning you can't monetize if you're just starting off like I did 2 years ago on my YouTube journey. Nobody knew me, and even now after 2 years, I only now managed to pass 5,000 subscribers. So imagine if I would have started 10 years ago, I could have already amassed way more subscribers and built a much bigger audience. So time is your biggest friend. Start early, build your personal brand. And it doesn't mean you have to show your face, right? You can start writing a blog, you could put a podcast out there, or build your actual brand, fashion, clothes, whatever. Start posting and start building a following around it. And that leads me to my next point. As you know, in this channel, I speak mostly about investing. And honestly, that's one point I regret a little bit, not having invested earlier. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm a German, I'm very frugal. I always loved saving. So I always had quite a bit of money saved away. But honestly, it was just sitting in my bank account, hardly accumulating any interest. Obviously, we were in a very low interest environment. So the best thing I've done with this actually was in the end buying real estate in Dubai. That was actually the best investment. But at the same time, I could have also started investing into some dividend growth stocks and started accumulating and compounding that over time already. Because time can definitely be your best friend or your worst enemy. The later you start investing, the more risk you have to take to catch up to people who invested earlier, a bit more conservative, and definitely started compounding their growth and wealth over time. Just go on Google and look for a compound growth calculator. You will see if you invest small amounts over time, it will take 20 years and you still don't see a huge difference. But then after 30, 40 years, it starts growing exponentially. So the earlier you start your investing journey, the faster you will start seeing results. And too many people, myself included, just leave it for their 30s, 40s to start investing. And it's still not too late. Obviously, we're also living longer these days. But again, if you would have started in the 20s, you might reach financial independence already in your 50s or 60s, while others might have to wait until their 70s or even 80s. So the earlier you start the process, even with small money, it can start the compounding growth over time. So definitely don't wait around to start getting invested. Especially these days, it's easier than ever. You have commission-free trading. I remember back in the days when I actually started thinking about investing, to buy one share, it was 15 euros in my bank. I mean, crazy. You couldn't buy fractional shares, so you had to buy a full share. Some of them were 200-300 euros, and I didn't have that money at the time. So in the end, I just didn't do it. These days, you can start investing from as little as €1, and there's no commission. So honestly, what are you waiting for? And lastly, it's about choosing the wrong friends. Now, you may ask me, Kai, you're talking about money mistakes, but yes, that's exactly what I mean, because you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Now imagine your closest friends, they smoke every day. Probably you're also going to join them smoking, so you're going to spend money on that. Then they're going to go out every weekend to party and drink and spend money on things you really don't need, that is actually bad for your health. Most likely, more often than not, you will join them as well. Otherwise, you're going to be the party pooper, right? So they definitely are impacting you and your wallet. Now imagine on the flip side, if your closest friends would be the ones starting to build their own business or having a little side hustle, probably they would be very excited about it, very passionate, and mostly talk about that rather than how the last night was, how much they got drunk, or playing computer games all day. So be very mindful of the friends you spend your time with. Now obviously also not all my friends are all inspirational and multi-millionaires, that's clear, and it doesn't mean you have to cut them off immediately, but maybe reduce the time you spend with them a little bit and try to find a new group of people that inspire you, that uplift you, that push you forward. And even if you tell me you live in a country or a city where you don't know anyone or you don't find any inspirational people around you, then listen to amazing podcasts or go on YouTube videos and surround yourself by successful people. Listen to their interviews and get inspired by them. They can become your virtual friends, so to say, and by hanging out with them every day, which is actually what I do as well. Whenever I drive, I'm in the gym, I listen to inspirational people who I can learn from something rather than the latest Kim Kardashian gossips, etc., because that's not really helping my life and accelerating me to the next level. So definitely choose your circle of friends very wisely, and it will have an impact on you and your wallet for the long term. I hope you enjoyed the video and a little hike with me. If you did, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, it means the world to me. As always, stay healthy, get wealthy, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.